Great. So, I'm going to talk a bit about the healthcare data landscape, and I'm going to focus on the industry approaches that are currently being used to unlock the value of that data. And I'm going to focus on the challenges and pitfalls associated with those approaches. And then I'm going to present a solution for smart data retrieval that addresses some of those challenges. So the situation, we've got a huge, diverse set of data being aggregated in the industry. We're looking at electronic health records, medical reports, lab reports, genomic data, so on. And there's an increasing awareness about the value to be unlocked from these data sets by building automation and applications on top of that data. But there are still significant barriers to delivering on that value. Data is hard. There are concerns around privacy and data access, and there are significant challenges with curating and structuring the data to support a large variety of downstream use cases. And in response to this, we're seeing cloud providers like AWS, Google, Azure evolve their offerings for healthcare data storage and analysis. And to be compatible with platforms like this, we're seeing an increasing push towards interoperable data formats like FHIR or FHIR. So what are some of the valuable opportunities we're hearing about where healthcare data can be better applied today? Well, about 7 months ago, leaders from AbbVie and Syneos Health went on stage at the Oracle Health Conference, and they spoke about clinical trial recruitment as one of the major bottlenecks in bringing new drugs to market. So one idea is that we can better use these large unstructured data sets to find patients that meet this eligibility criteria for trials and match them to those trials. They also spoke about the need to better use real-world evidence, so that's data generated in the clinic, to continue to evaluate the efficacy and adverse effects of therapies long after they've gone to market. And we call this post-market surveillance. And finally, I think we all understand that better, more fluid, more accurate data access can help clinicians deliver evidence-based healthcare. So that's just a snapshot of some of the opportunities for better data utilization in the space. So how do we solve for these use cases? Well, I want to start by describing what I call the traditional approach to building these data-driven pipelines and enabling these applications. So you start by amassing and integrating this diverse set of data. You then enter into this long and complex process of curating and structuring the data. And the idea here is that you end up with this perfectly structured set of data. You've got this structured database, and if we can just get to that point, we can solve all the downstream use cases, right? We can build the applications, and we'll be able to solve all the specific tasks. But unfortunately, that has not been my experience. This is a long-winded process. It forces you to determine ahead of time a one-size-fits-all set of annotations to serve all the downstream use cases, and it's boiling the ocean. You end up with a rigid set of annotations that rarely get the user all the way in any specific use case. So we want to challenge some of these assumptions with an alternative approach. And so our thinking is that we want to have a much more lightweight pre-processing step, keeping the data in a largely unstructured format. We then expose an interface to the user, allow them to define exactly what they want, and we then use what we call just-in-time annotation to curate and structure the data as required by the user's query at runtime. So this layer would use existing structure in the dataset where it exists, but it would fill or create the missing structure at runtime using local private language models. So now I want to give some examples of this approach in effect using our system. So I'll just give you an idea of what the data we're working with looks like here. This is unstructured medical transcripts. Some of you will be familiar. We have ingested a whole data set of these, and I'm now going to jump into a demo here. Look at that. So what you're seeing here is a lightweight user interface sitting on top of all that unstructured data. And what it allows is the user to type in a natural language query. And I've got some examples queued up here. Let's look for patients who have recently quit smoking and have a history of significant alcohol consumption. So what you can see here is how our system has interpreted that query. So you can see we've determined the required metadata that we need to annotate for. So we need to annotate for smoking status and alcohol consumption history in this case. And we've determined the filters we need to apply on that data to resolve the query. So if we look at some example results here, this is just a snippet of the relevant content from the original long unstructured record. And it's been annotated for alcohol consumption history and smoking status. And on the right, you have a generated explanation as to why this patient record meets the user's criteria. So, for instance, you can see that we've picked up nicotine patch, and our system has identified that as a signal that the patient may have recently quit smoking. So that's pretty useful. You can see examples like tobacco use quit 2 years ago, been labelled as a former smoker. 6-pack of beer per week, been labelled as a moderate drinker. I think that's up for debate. Useful. So this is these are examples of context-sensitive matches which give the user the information exactly related to the query they're running. And I'll give one more example of this. So now let's look for patients who have a family history of heart disease and a personal history of high cholesterol and high blood pressure. So we're going to need to annotate these records for medical conditions like heart disease and high cholesterol, but we're going to need to distinguish between family history and personal history in order to resolve this query correctly. So in this first example, we've highlighted dyslipidemia, and that is a synonymous concept associated with high cholesterol. So that's the tick of our first criteria. We can see that the father died of MI, and our system has determined that to be an abbreviation for myocardial infarction, therefore it's heart disease, so that's another tick. And finally, we've highlighted the fact that blood pressure is at 126/80, and our system knows that that is above the normal range, so that's high blood pressure. So I'm going to just discuss one more example here. So in this example, it's above the normal range, but it's hypertension is defined at 130/80. Normal range 120/80.
Yeah, it's not clinically significant.
Yeah. Okay. It's not clinically significant, but this is so maybe we can address this in the panel. But point is that it's context is everything, and it's talking to me about signals about the blood pressure, and that is the only information I care about. I need to review these records to see whether these patients meet my criteria, and so it's highlighted to me their blood pressure is at that degree, and then it's debatable. I think six-pack of beer per week is also debatable, so totally. I'll discuss one final example. What's interesting about this example is there's no direct mention of hypertension or high cholesterol in the patient record, but what we do have is a long list of medications that the patient is taking. And what we found is that enalapril is picked up, and because our system has recognised that as a drug for high blood pressure. Similarly, atorvastatin is a drug for high cholesterol. So we picked that up. I've got a bit more time because there was some... Yeah, so this is an example. I think these examples nicely demonstrate the power of a context-sensitive system that can give you a purposeful and directed set of annotations and explanations for the user query. So I'll now jump out, do some juggling. Okay, so that's our demo. What it provides is a lean and adaptable system for smart retrieval. It allows us to deliver custom annotations and data structures for a specific user query that gives superior results. And it allows us to avoid these bloated pre-processing and data structuring cycles. So it saves time and cost, get something to the end user faster. So if you're working with any of these use cases in clinical trial recruitment or post-market surveillance, we'd love to put our tech to use there. Or similarly, if you have large unstructured or semi-structured medical data sets that you want to effectively utilize while avoiding long development cycles, that's exactly what we're trying to solve. So we'd love to hear from you.